Welcome back to the Mad Genius Thesis. I am so excited for our deep dive today.
Me too. It's a fascinating one.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
This age-old question.
Yeah.
Is there a link between creativity and mental illness?
Yeah.
Do those who struggle maybe see the world differently,
Uh-huh.
more vividly?
It's a good question. A really good question.
We've got 3 really fascinating books by Scott Barry Kaufman to kind of help you unpack this.
Okay.
Wired to Create,
Mm-hmm.
Ungifted, Intelligence Redefined, and The Complexity of Greatness.
The great lineup.
And let me tell you, one thing that really grabbed my attention right away was this idea that even someone considered a prodigy, someone like chess champion Josh Waitzkin,
Right.
still needed years of dedicated effort to reach mastery.
Yeah.
It makes you think, right?
It really does.
Nature,
Yeah.
nurture,
Right.
or a bit of both.
It's always both, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's fascinating about Kaufman's work is that he doesn't shy away from this complexity at all. He dives right in, arguing that separating nature and nurture is like trying to separate the ingredients from the chef.
Oh, I like that.
You need both to create a masterpiece.
Right.
Think of genes as the raw ingredients, offering possibilities, but it's the environment, your experiences, choices, even your mindset, that determines what you actually cook up.
That's such a great analogy. It makes you wonder about the stories we tell ourselves, too. Like, if we believe intelligence is fixed,
Right.
are we limiting ourselves? Kaufman seems to be pretty critical of labels.
Oh, yeah.
Especially those gifted and ungifted ones we put on kids.
Absolutely. He argues that these labels can create a fixed mindset, making people believe their abilities are set in stone.
Totally.
Instead, he champions a growth mindset, the belief that we can always learn and evolve. This resonated with me, especially when he talks about the 10-year rule.
Oh, wow.
Think about your own passions. Have you dedicated a decade to mastering one? It really highlights the power of consistent effort and dedication.
10 years is a long time.
It is, but it makes you think, right?
It does. It's almost like those years of practice, that commitment, rewire your brain in a way.
It might.
And speaking of rewiring, Kaufman introduces this mind-blowing concept called
Epigenetics.
Epigenetics.
Yeah.
Basically, the idea that your experiences can actually switch genes on or off.
Wow.
So our environment isn't just shaping who we are.
Right.
It's potentially shaping our very biology.
It really challenges the classic nature versus nurture debate, doesn't it? It's more like a constant dance between the two, with each influencing the other in fascinating ways. And this is where things start to get really interesting in relation to, the Mad Genius Thesis.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because this is where we start to see a potential connection between creativity and mental illness. Kaufman talks about this idea of shared vulnerability, where certain genetic predispositions might make someone more susceptible to both.
Yeah, it's like a heightened sensitivity, a way of experiencing the world that's both a gift and a challenge.
I see.
Imagine a finely tuned instrument. It can create beautiful music, but it's also more delicate, more easily thrown out of tune.
So it's not that one causes the other.
Right.
But they might share some common roots. This actually reminds me of savant syndrome. Think about Kim Peek, the savant who inspired Rain Man.
Oh, yeah.
He had this astounding memory.
Yes.
But also struggled with social interaction. Could this be a more extreme example of that shared vulnerability?
It's certainly a compelling example, and it underscores the idea that our brains are incredibly complex.
Right.
What we might label as a disorder could also be the source of unique strengths and abilities.
It makes you wonder what the line between normal and exceptional, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And how much of it is shaped by societal expectations. Speaking of shaping things, Kaufman dives into this fascinating concept of cognitive disinhibition.
Cognitive disinhibition. Interesting.
It's like loosening the reins on your brain's filter, letting in a wider range of thoughts and ideas.
He argues that this openness to experience is a key ingredient for creativity. Imagine being able to make connections others might miss, seeing patterns where others see chaos. But wouldn't too much disinhibition be overwhelming?
Right.
How do we find that balance?
That's a great question. It makes me think of daydreaming. We often see it as a waste of time.
Right.
But Kaufman actually champions it as a potential wellspring of creativity.
Interesting.
He suggests that when we allow our minds to wander, we're essentially giving our brains the freedom to make those unexpected connections.
Exactly. He even connects this to research on the brain's default network, the parts that activate when we're not focused on a specific task. This network plays a key role in mind wandering, self-reflection, and imagining future possibilities, all crucial ingredients for creative thinking.
So maybe Einstein was onto something when he said, creativity is the residue of time wasted.
Maybe.
Perhaps we need those moments of mental downtime to allow our unconscious minds to do their thing. But then, how do we harness that without getting completely lost in our thoughts?
Kaufman suggests techniques like mindfulness meditation can help. It's not about emptying your mind, but about observing your thoughts without judgment, allowing them to flow without getting carried away.
So finding that sweet spot between focus and free-flowing thought. It almost sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? But I guess creativity often thrives on paradox.
Absolutely. And this brings us back to that delicate balance we were discussing earlier.
Right.
The same sensitivity that can fuel creativity can also make someone more susceptible to sensory overload, even mental distress.
Like having the volume turned up on all of life's experiences, both the good and the bad.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be incredibly intense. So how do we manage that intensity without stifling the creative spark?
Kaufman emphasizes the importance of finding environments and activities that nurture the sensitivity. Whether it's spending time in nature, losing yourself in music, or connecting with others who understand your intensity.
It makes me think of Frida Kahlo, the Mexican painter. She endured so much physical pain, yet she channeled it into her art, transforming suffering into something powerful and deeply personal.
Kahlo is a perfect example of how creativity can be a source of healing and resilience. Kaufman even dedicates a whole chapter in Wired to Create to exploring this connection between creativity and post-traumatic growth.
That's incredibly inspiring. It suggests that even in our darkest moments, we have this innate capacity to create, to transform pain into beauty, and to find hope and meaning in the midst of chaos. It makes you wonder, what are the limits of human potential when it comes to creativity?
That's a question worth pondering, isn't it? And it's something we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into Kaufman's work. You know, it's fascinating to think about how we often associate creativity with artistic expression, but it's so much more than that. Kaufman argues that it's a way of engaging with the world, a way of problem-solving, connecting with others, and even finding meaning in our struggles.
That makes sense. It's like creativity isn't just about making art.
Yeah.
It's about making life itself a bit more artful. And that brings us to something we touched on earlier.
Okay.
The bias against creativity that Kaufman talks about. It seems like we praise creativity in theory.
Right.
But in practice, we're often resistant to new ideas, especially those that challenge the status quo.
It's almost like we have this inherent fear of the unknown, a need to cling to what's familiar even if it's no longer serving us. Kaufman uses the example of Galileo.
Oh, yeah.
The astronomer who dared to challenge the idea that the Earth was the center of the universe.
And he was ridiculed and persecuted for it, right?
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder that truly groundbreaking ideas often meet with resistance, even hostility.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's those brave individuals who dare to push boundaries that often drive progress.
Exactly. It takes courage to challenge conventional thinking, to stand up for what you believe in, even when the world seems to be against you. And that brings us to another important aspect of Kaufman's work, the idea of harmonious passion.
This is that sweet spot we were talking about before, right?
Yes.
Where you're deeply engaged in your work, driven by a love of the process, without becoming so obsessed that you lose yourself in it.
It's about finding that balance between passion and perspective, between pushing your limits and knowing when to step back and recharge. And this is where practices like mindfulness can be so helpful.
Right.
Because they can help us cultivate self-awareness, to notice when we're getting caught up in our thoughts and emotions, and to make conscious choices about how we engage with our work and the world around us.
So it's about becoming the master of your own creative process, learning to harness the power of your imagination, while also cultivating the wisdom and resilience to navigate the inevitable challenges that arise along the way. It's almost like being a tightrope walker, isn't it? Balancing on that thin line between inspiration and burnout.
That's a great analogy. And it leads us to another fascinating concept that Kaufman explores, the dual process theory of human intelligence. Have you ever had a sudden solution pop into your head while doing something completely unrelated?
Oh, all the time.
That's your unconscious mind at work.
Yeah, I have those moments all the time. It's like my brain is working on a problem in the background, and then boom, the answer just appears out of thin air.
This theory suggests that our thinking operates on two levels, conscious and unconscious. The conscious mind analyzes information plans, makes deliberate choices. But the unconscious mind, that realm of intuition and insight, that's where the magic often happens.
It makes me think about the story of Archimedes discovering the principle of buoyancy while taking a bath. It wasn't through conscious effort, but a sudden flash of insight. It's like those aha moments come when we least expect them, often when we're relaxed and not actively trying to solve a problem.
Exactly. And Kaufman suggests we can actually train our minds to be more receptive to these unconscious insights. It's about quieting the mental chatter, letting go of the need to control everything, and just allowing ourselves to be present with whatever arises. Practices like meditation, mindfulness, even daydreaming can help cultivate this receptivity.
So it's about learning to trust our intuition, that gut feeling that often arises from the depths of our unconscious. This reminds me of something you said earlier about creativity not being a solo endeavor. We need support, encouragement, and inspiration from others. It seems like having a supportive network could be especially important for those who are more sensitive, more prone to the ups and downs that often accompany a creative life.
Absolutely. We all need people who understand us, who can cheer us on when we're feeling inspired and offer a listening ear when we're struggling. Whether it's mentors, collaborators, or just a community of like-minded individuals, having that support system can make all the difference.
It's a beautiful reminder that we're all in this together, that we can learn from each other's experiences, and that by sharing our gifts and supporting each other's dreams, we can create something truly extraordinary.
And that brings us back to the core question of this deep dive. Is there a link between creativity and mental illness? While Kaufman doesn't offer a simple yes or no answer, his work points to a much more nuanced understanding. It's not about one causing the other, but rather this idea of shared vulnerability, a heightened sensitivity that can manifest in both extraordinary creativity and mental health challenges.
It's like walking a tightrope.
Yeah.
That delicate balance between pushing the boundaries of perception and experience while also maintaining a sense of groundedness and well-being. And it seems like the key to navigating this tightrope might lie in self-awareness, resilience, and finding the right support system.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most powerful takeaways from Kaufman's work. He doesn't just present theories, he offers practical tools and strategies for cultivating a healthier, more balanced relationship with our own creative process.
So it's not just about understanding the link between creativity and mental illness. It's about empowering individuals to harness their creative potential while also taking care of their mental well-being.
And it's a reminder that creativity isn't just for the gifted few. It's a human birthright, a capacity that resides within each and every one of us.
That's such a powerful message. And it makes me wonder what would happen if we all embraced our creative potential. If we nurtured those sparks of imagination and allowed them to blossom, what kind of world could we create?
That's a beautiful question, and one that I think we'll continue to explore as we wrap up this deep dive into the Mad Genius Thesis.
We've covered so much ground today, from the interplay of nature and nurture to the power of mindset and docking, that delicate dance between creativity and mental well-being. You know, it's like we've been peeling back the layers of an onion, revealing more complexity and nuance with each layer.
And it seems like the more we explore, the more we realize there's no simple answer to this question of the Mad Genius Thesis. It's not about proving or disproving a link between creativity and mental illness, but rather about developing a deeper understanding of the human experience, with all its complexities and contradictions.
One thing that keeps coming up for me is this idea of sensitivity.
Right.
That heightened awareness. That can be both a source of creative inspiration, but also a vulnerability to emotional turmoil. It makes you wonder if it's even possible to cultivate one without the other, or if they're like inherently intertwined.
It's a fascinating question, and I think Kaufman would argue that it's not about suppressing or eliminating sensitivity, but rather about learning to manage it effectively. It's like having a powerful engine.
Yeah.
You need the right skills and tools to harness that power without losing control.
So it's not about trying to fit into some narrow definition of normal, but about embracing our unique sensitivities and finding ways to channel them in a healthy and productive way.
Exactly. And this is where practices like mindfulness and meditation can be so valuable. They can help us develop a greater awareness of our own thoughts, emotions, and sensations, allowing us to make conscious choices about how we respond to them.
It's almost like building a buffer between stimulus and response, creating a space for reflection and choice.
Yes.
And I imagine this could be especially important for individuals who are more sensitive, more prone to feeling overwhelmed by the world around them.
Absolutely. And it's not just about managing difficult emotions.
Right.
Mindfulness can also help us cultivate a sense of appreciation for the beauty and wonder that often go unnoticed. In the midst of our busy lives, it's about slowing down, paying attention, and savoring those moments of joy and inspiration that fuel our creative fire.
It's like training ourselves to see the world through the eyes of an artist.
Noticing those subtle details, those fleeting moments of light and shadow that others might miss. And I think that's one of the most powerful gifts that creativity offers us, the ability to find beauty and meaning in the everyday, even in the midst of challenges and setbacks.
Beautifully put. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. Creativity is not just about producing great works of art or groundbreaking discoveries. It's about living a more engaged, more meaningful, and ultimately more fulfilling life.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to embrace your own unique creative spark.
Yes.
Nurture your passions.
Explore.
Explore new ideas. And don't be afraid to color outside the lines. The world needs your unique voice, your unique perspective, and your unique contributions.
Remember, creativity is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the driving force of innovation, progress, and ultimately our evolution as human beings.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Mad Genius Thesis. We hope you've gained some new insights, sparked some new ideas, and maybe even felt a little bit more inspired to embrace your own creative potential. Until next time, keep creating, keep exploring, and keep believing in the power of the human imagination.